Okay, so keeping up with the friends I have was where I left off on the previous video. And I was talking with my wife about how hard it is to even spend the time with other people. But I make excuses because I need downtime because my brain needs to chill. But all of that didn't matter. I started this video again twice. I got a phone call right in the middle of my flow, totally interrupted the shit, and it pissed me off. And I was like, so I started again, and I couldn't remember exactly where I was at, so I had to go back and watch the video. I'm just being straight up with y'all. Like, even though I talk off the cuff and I'm sitting here just chilling in my chair in the back office area, I still set up a couple of lights and I still try to have a presentation that's reasonable. I don't want to make a video that cuts off in the middle. Sure, I could have an editor that does all this shit for me, and like I said earlier, makes a fancy green screen and nice backdrop for me and some beautiful bokeh so I can pretend like what I'm saying matters more. But I think you all know that many of the YouTubers out there, many of the Facebookers out there, it doesn't matter which website you're on. It doesn't matter if you're published in books or you're a politician or a musician. People put on a play. They put on a show. They try to show you the part of themselves they want to. And it's very hard to find authentic people, real authentic people. And when you meet one, stick to them. Don't stick to them, sorry. Uh, Try to learn from them. And if you can be friends with anyone, being friends with kind people, with generous people, there are many different types of people. Some people only associate with criminals because they're criminals themselves. But the whole point is having a wide variety of friends with different opinions and realizing how valuable that is to know people. And when I say friends, I'm talking about your spouses too, or your partners, or your kids, or your parents. My oldest son is 28, and we get along very well. We've never fought. We didn't punish him harshly when he was a kid or anything. He's never, as far as I know, resented us. Who knows? There have been moments where we've had issues like any family, but, I'm very, very proud of him. When I started my channel, I think he was 16, 15 or 16. So he still lived with us. And, watching him grow up and learn to play guitar and become a good human, as far as I'm concerned, all I know is what I consider to be a good human. And I like to meet other good people, other kind people. And I try to make time. I think I should try to make time for new friends, but I also want to spend time with the friends that I have. But all of that is neither here nor there when it comes to my own personal grievances in life, the way I feel from day to day, my raw, true emotion when I'm not just spitting my opinions or thoughts, but when I'm talking about myself. And I have some deep emotional angst in life that I don't share with people that I meet or family or friends. Not because I don't trust them with that, but because I don't want to burden them with that. If that makes sense. If I put it on the internet, believe me, it's not a cry for help. That's not where I'm coming from here. I'm really trying to understand people and relate to other people. And the entirety of really where I want to go with my channel, if anywhere, has always been to find thoughtful people to interact with. that understand the value of a good conversation. But that also lays a burden on me to always present good information myself, you see. And herein lies the conundrum, because my channel also is me just posting pictures of baby birds on my porch, or posting a Dave Chappelle clip, or a picture of Elmo with what looks like blow all over his nose. I have a weird warped sense of humor, a very kind of dark, was it Diogenes? Was he the philosopher that had a kind of a fecal issue? I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. I've never been one for knowing philosophers, their connection to their ideas and names, but I know all the ideas, and some of these guys were just some dirty ass motherfuckers, but they had great ideas. And I think I'm not a dirty person. I'm not filthy minded, especially not sexually. It's not my thing when it comes to like perversion that way. But I do have a kind of a nihilistic view of life in general, and I feel like I've moved from spirituality, if you want to call it that, into kind of a nihilism of trying to understand what matters and what doesn't, then creating it for myself. And that's what nihilism is about, discovery. I'm going to make sure it's still recording because, yes, I have problems with that. So nihilism is not abandoning any value. I considered myself kind of not a nihilist. I'm a realist, but it took me through this idea of kind of deconstructing what people, I guess some people are raised religiously and otherwise, and they're forced to kind of rethink what they were taught. For me, I was never taught anything. My parents weren't religious. They weren't atheists. They didn't care. They never taught me anything about belief systems, which I think is kind of weird because, honestly, my kids and I talk about God and religion, and I try to tell them it's open to their own interpretations. But I also, when they ask my opinion, I have to say, God's a metaphor for the universal mind. I believe in a consciousness, and we go into this, weird existential shit. But ultimately, I don't think, as I've always said, no one system holds a monopoly on belief or on God. I should say just on what is true, or God, rather. A belief is a belief. It just means, a faith, for example, is belief in something without any evidence. And to me, that's understandable when you put it in the context of saying, I don't need evidence to prove that the universe is very old and very beautiful and amazing in its entirety and complexity. How could you not be fucking amazed looking around at the world? Like, I don't understand how some people can be so trapped in their narrow little fields of view and not really realize, holy shit, the universe is huge. But then part of me says they do realize, and they shut it down. And I've seen this so many times, especially in people who take psychedelics. I've taken psychedelics with a few people and with large groups of people. For some people, they cannot comprehend what they're seeing because they're seeing themselves. Mushrooms, for example, reflect you back at yourself. And the more it becomes popular, I think this will be a good thing. I think legalization of all psychedelics will be only a benefit for humanity because people need to feel safe and confident taking them. And a lot of people will not take them if they're illegal. And I guess I kind of understand that as I get older, like, they trust the law. People trust the system. They trust their government. It's sad. I mean, it's really sad. The things that our federal government and our military has done to its own citizens over the decades is so aberrant and just horrible, beyond words, beyond measure, that to say I just trust the system has always amazed me. And so what I'm getting at is I see this as a psychological issue. People want to believe because they have lives to live. They don't want to worry about what they've been taught, whether it's propaganda. Still got to make sure it's still recording. Okay, it is. So the propaganda doesn't really matter to a lot of people. They just want to be confident and feel good about what they're told. And that gets very complicated. Actually, I better see how long this is recorded for. Oh, it's only 10 minutes? Holy shit, that's great. I felt like it was longer because it was a two-parter. But I don't want it to like cut into like 3 parts because of my shitty camera. But anyway, where was I? God, I wish I had this on the podcast because I'm kind of in a flow. But maybe I'll continue that way. By the way, I have a 15-minute free thinking podcast. Y'all should check it out. So, as I was saying, oh my God. A lot of what goes on in the world really just blows my mind. The fact that human beings can be so short-sighted and misunderstand each other so much. And since I was a kid, as I've said, I wasn't raised religious or non-religious. I was just raised as a kid. And when I got older, I started meeting... I remember having this friend, Rod Saxey, who was a Mormon, didn't even know what that was. But I'll never forget because we were allowed to go over to his house and visit one time. And he lived in kind of a nice house out in Lake Oswego and in the fancier part of town. We went there. The first thing is his mom had us all do yard work. Like literally never met this bitch. And she had us doing yard work 5 minutes after we got there. I was like, this is so out of touch of normalcy in my life. But years later, as an almost 50-year-old adult, I understand it from their perspective, because if there's anything I value, it's being able to put yourself in someone else's situation and say, if I believed this, then I would probably do this. It was her way of weeding out the kids that were not good to hang out with her son, which I don't agree with, but that's where she was probably coming from. It's the same way that, I know, we always weed out the weak, right? Somehow. And nature does it for us if we don't. And that's, I think, one of the most confusing issues for humans right now, living in today's world where we don't really have any direct dangers, any direct threats to most people in the West, except for the ones that we create for ourselves. And that's pretty fucking wild if you think about it. So for millions of years, nature has done its best to protect its own species. We've got, the great apes. We've got whoever our ancestors were, the hominids. As humans developed, we started to develop groups, larger groups and larger groups, and we had to cooperate with one another. But the benefit of this was we could grow more food and we could protect each other against animals. But even up until a few hundred years ago, out here in the West where I live, there were, all kinds of attacks and maulings by wild animals. But even say something as simple as a rattlesnake bite could kill you. But now we have anti-venom. We have hospitals that can take care of these things. And of course, we've weeded out most of the wild animals that we once had, which is not a good thing. But the point being that the threat that we have the most is each other. And the internet has amplified this voice of anger from so many people. And when I started this video/podcast, I talked about how I felt a little jaded lately. And I'm trying not to be. And that's where I really wanted to go with this. When I hear about the bullshit going on in the world right now, it's just, I can't deal with it. I have my own life going on. So I told myself about 3 months ago, I mentioned this. I made a video about this, and I think or maybe just a post, but it was a challenge to say, don't watch any media for the whole year. And it was at the beginning of this year. I think it was maybe 3 months in. Sorry, I'm trying to remember exactly when. But I decided I'm not clicking on any news articles at all. Then I kind of honed it to say nothing about people, nothing about especially foreign governments or conspiracies or anything having to do with individual people or what they've done. And it's hard to avoid. You will hear about what happened, and that's fine. But not seeking it out, it doesn't take up rent in my brain. And that is important. If you're thinking about like King Charles and you're an American, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why are you letting something like this take up time in your brain? And it's weird to me because I understand that people want to feel like they're involved in what's going on. But, you know, there's just too much stupidity out there and too much rubbernecking and worrying about what other people do. And I have to say that we're overcoming this slowly as a species. Let me not back up, but just start over here. When I was younger, I tried psychedelics. I never stopped. I discovered that there was a part of me that was bonded with every other human being and nature itself at a very relatively younger age. And I do not encourage this for anyone else. And I'm not sponsoring or encouraging anyone to try these things or to do them illegally or any of that other stupid legal crap. But fuck it, it doesn't matter. I mean, I feel like the tides are turning right now. A lot more people are finding out that by taking psychedelics, that they don't need to worry themselves about society's bullshit all the time. We don't need to stress. And I watched this video this morning about what they call quiet quitting, and I want to make a separate video about this actually, maybe a podcast, but let's see. Oh, I turned the camera to see if it was still recording, and it was at 17:19, just like 7:19, right? Or I-719. I like to laugh at the little things. God damn it. Forgot what I was talking about. Anyway, it doesn't matter what I watched, but uh-oh. I scratched my arm and I have a cut from work. Oh well. It's bleeding a little bit. Hey, that's as real as it gets, right? Yeah, I'll lick it clean. Heal the wound just like a dog. Maybe this will help me reframe and rephrase here. This podcast was intended to be around 20 minutes, and I'm getting pretty close to that mark. Okay, that's not true. I just lied. That's weird. Not lied, but I should say usually the 15-minute free thinking podcasts are around 20 minutes, so I just assumed it would be. But no, it wasn't the plan. I'll go for as long as I have to. But with the part one, it's probably much longer. So the part one will only be available on YouTube, but the part two will be part of a podcast because I'm recording both. And I mention that because I'm totally disorganized, disheveled, and cannot seem to do the internet thing right. And this takes me back full circle to the beginning. If I was a guy like, let's just take, I'm trying to think of a name, Cole Hastings, random YouTube channel that I watch. I like the guy. He's pretty smart. He has some good things to say. And his videos are very well produced, right? A good-looking guy with his hair combed properly. And here I am, a disheveled hippie with, long hair. God, it's in knots, actually. It's in a braid right now. Believe it or not, I braid my own hair. So, that's some OG shit right there. So anyway, maybe that's not the best example of a channel, but there are quite a few channels that I watch where they're really well produced. Even one of my favorite, Beau Miles, he's from Australia. He did this one recently where it was like 12 Days of Newness, and he started at the beginning of the year, and he's done all the episodes now, but they were spread out over like a few months. And the guy is awesome, totally likable, big red beard. He's jogged around and cleaned up garbage. He's rode like a kayak to work. He's done all kinds of weird shit. And he's very likable, let's say. But he also has a camera guy and an editor. And I think about these teams that make these channels work, and I think, what if I could take my channel and have somebody edit it into a format that works, and then somebody else to do all the video, additions. And then I think back to when I did that myself, and I was like, oh, I could do that too. But then I think further and think, what the hell am I talking about? Oh, damn. My arm just keeps bleeding. It's pretty annoying. It's finally stopping. Oh, God. I know you don't want to hear that. It doesn't matter. As a carpenter, I cut myself all the time. So, this was a very random video with a lot of different topics, and I just wanted to say thanks for listening. I have been quite confused lately about a lot of things, what I want to do in my future. My boss informed me that he'll be hanging up the hat at the end of the year. I've been a carpenter for 20 years on and off, but I've done other things in the meantime. I sold Kratom for a while because I couldn't do carpentry anymore. It's a long story, but and I still do to a few people, but it's not my main thing. I wanted to do some hands-on labor and get out of the house. So I started working for a tiny house carpenter. Hippie dude like myself, cool guy. And but he just can't make enough, and he wants to move to Mexico, and he's leaving like Saturday to go down there and buy a house, and then in December I guess they're going to quit the company. So I got to find something else. But I wanted to make sure to mention this, to say it doesn't matter. I'll find something else. And that brings me back to, I never quite finished with the quiet quitting discussion I had, but talking about misconceptions, I've heard that a lot of young people are, quote, quiet quitting. I didn't realize that doesn't mean you're quitting your job at all. In fact, not at all. It means that you are just doing the bare minimum of your job. You go to work, you come home, and you do what you've got to do. I thought this was very interesting because there's a whole culture out there that I'm not part of, where these are the office jobs, the corporate jobs. If any of you have these types of jobs, let me know. If your boss asks you to work, a few extra hours off the clock or for free, this is the kind of shit we're talking about, and how you're not a team player if you don't do the extra work. Well, coincidentally, a video I was watching, a guy was pointing out the fact that, a lot of these old corporate owners expect that still, but don't realize that this could have been the exact same thing back in the 50s and 60s. They might give you a gold watch or a promotion. Nowadays, they just expect people to be expendable. And the workers are finally stepping up. And there's a lot of frustration out there. Oh my God, the video's already gotten too long. Hopefully it doesn't cut it up too much. I better go. I'm going to turn off the video. So, bye to YouTube. If you want to hear the rest of the audio version, which could go on for a little longer, that's why you'll have to pick up the 15-minute free thinking podcast. I'll see you there, peeps.